waking up from Madhya Pradesh. Now viewers, this is of course with regards to the special arrival of the 8 special guests back in India. We're talking about the 8 cheetahs who've landed in India, this in a special chartered flight from Namibia. They've also reached the Kuno National Park from Gwalior's Maharajpur Air Base, and we've been putting out those visuals of when they landed in that flight, in that special flight to Gwalior Airport, followed by which they were thereafter moved to a Chinook helicopter, the Indian Air Force's Chinook helicopter, to finally bring them to the Kuno National Park. And minutes from now, we're expecting the cheetahs to be released in a quarantine enclosure, so we'll be cutting across to those live visuals as well. These are of course the first exclusive visuals of the cheetahs who have made their arrival here in India. Now remember, we're talking about 8 cheetahs in total, 5 of whom are females and 3 are of course males, and they're part of the first intercontinental large wild carnivore translocation project. Now these cheetahs, which were declared extinct in India in 1952, are finally being reintroduced in the country. This of course after an MOU was signed between India and Namibia in July, and this is the latest visual coming in of one of those special cats that are back in India. Okay, let me go across to our guest joining us on this broadcast. We have Mr. Ajay Suri, wildlife expert and filmmaker as well. Also with us is Mr. Arjun M. Gopalaswamy. If I could begin with Mr. Suri. Mr. Suri, you know, we're keeping up with the first visuals of one of the cheetahs who is now finally in India, and minutes from now we will see those visuals come in of their release into the Kuno National Park. So much awaited day there really, but what do you make of this big decision that was earlier made and finally being implemented today?
Well, I'll put it this way. This is not just a historical step. You know, there are a lot of challenges. There will be a lot of challenges and roadblocks for the cheetah. It won't be a cakewalk for them, you know. I mean, you don't expect these cheetahs to become acclimatized to Kuno, say, in the next few months. This will not happen because a lot of monitoring is going to take place. But at the same time, let me say, a lot is going for the cheetah. Number one is the political will. You know, the first serious attempt to bring cheetah back to India was made in 70s, I believe. But at that time, the Shah of Iran was dethroned and this thing could not happen. Number two, the thing which will really, favor the cheetah's successful translocation would be the technology. You know, right now we are armed with the best surveillance equipment which would be needed to keep a check on the cheetahs. We'll have radio collars. We'll have, camera traps, a whole kind of, whole lot of technological innovation. But I think one of the biggest things going for cheetah is that cheetah still exists in our collective memory. It still hasn't gone away. You know, every time, you talk to people in villages and small towns, they would refer to a leopard as a cheetah. You know, see, cheetah has been in India for last so many hundreds of years. Mughal Emperor Akbar had 1,000 cheetahs. Jahangir had 400 cheetahs. You have the drawings of cheetahs in the caves of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. So cheetah never went away from India. In that sense, it's a very welcome step. Of course, it's going to face a lot of challenges, but it'll also be duly protected because our government is, committed to protect it. And don't forget, NTCA, the National Tiger Conservation Authority, it will be supervising, all the steps which will be taken to successfully relocate cheetah. And look how good they have done for the tigers. So that is something really wonderful for the cheetah, and I believe that, it's going to survive in Kuno in a big way.
Okay, all right. If I could bring in Mr. Gopala Swamy, and also a quick update, because, you know, here are visuals of course, one of the cheetahs who is now finally going to be released by the Prime Minister as well. And on the contrary, that's a video that goes back to 1930s, which explains, it's a British era film, which explains the kind of brutalities that were committed on the cheetahs. So we're really hoping that things do turn around, because we're, of course, you know, way ahead of what was happening in 1930s. Mr. Gopala Swamy, there is, of course, a divided opinion in India, with some experts and the government, of course, hoping it will revive grasslands as well, and others convinced that these claims are hollow and myopic. So some really looking forward to it and perhaps thinking that this is a step in the right direction, while others have their apprehension that, you know, there are a lot of challenges and this is just the beginning, and it's certainly something that is coming with a lot of risk. What is your opinion?
Yeah. First, thank you for having me on. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, very much.
All right. So, well, just talking from the standpoint of, you know, global cheetah conservation efforts, and we are talking here about the African cheetahs, right? So the first question to ask here is, how is this project benefiting African cheetahs? All right, and from a global cheetah conservation perspective, this is probably not a very important project at all. So from the standpoint of cheetahs and from the standpoint of cheetah conservation, so now the argument here is, should like India bring these cheetahs over or not? Now, all of this has to be viewed with the larger perspective. First, clearly this is a cheetah introduction project, right? So we never had African cheetahs here in India. So this is very much a cheetah introduction project. And the scientific arguments around this is that actually, you know what, the genetics are very close, so it doesn't matter if we bring the African cheetahs in here. But I think what really matters is that even though the variation in genetics might be a little different, morphologically, the African cheetahs is about 25 to 30% larger than the Asiatic cheetahs. And this I've never seen sort of really mentioned much within the cheetah action plan. So this is kind of the first question.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting because, you know, earlier on we had a panelist who, when asked about this distinction, said there's very little difference with regards to the genetic difference between the two, if we talk about the Asiatic cheetah and the African cheetah. So very interesting what you just said. I'm going to have to ask you to hold on with that thought. Remember, the centre has already been saying that the introduction is not just limited to the species recovery program, but also an effort to restore the ecosystem with the lost element. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But remember, as Prime Minister Modi turns 72, that's the day that we're seeing this induction take place, if I may say. On his birthday, Prime Minister will be releasing into the wild 8 spotted arrivals from Namibia. We're already looking at those developments come in. These arrivals, remember, 8 cheetahs who are being translocated to India from Windhoek. By the way, India was once home to this big cat, but rampant hunting by the British occupiers and Indian royalty ensured that it was pushed into extinction in 1952. Here's a quick report, but before that, let's quickly play out these visuals of Jyotiraditya Scindia as well, interacting with some of the officials upon the cheetah's arrival here in India. All right, that's...
क्योंकि अगर ये इस पूरे मौसम को यहाँ के जलवायु को अडेप्ट कर लेंगे तो निश्चित तौर पर इस पूरे प्रोजेक्ट की एक बड़ी कामयाबी होगी और फिर आने वाले दिनों में कई और चीतों को लाए जाने का भी जो क्रम है वो पूरा किया जा सकेगा। देखिए, चैलेंजेस काफी सारे, अनुराग, जो स्पेशलिस्ट हैं, जो एक्सपर्ट्स हैं, वो जरूर डर रहे हैं कि सब कुछ पॉजिटिव नोट पर जरूर देखा जा रहा है, लेकिन इन चीतों को लेकर कुछ चैलेंजेस भी जरूर हैं। तेंदुए का खतरा इसलिए बताया जा रहा है कि जो जोन, जो पालपुर का सेंट्रिक इलाका है, वहां पर एक तेंदुआ देखा गया था। बहरहाल, तेंदुए और चीतों के बीच में आपस में दोस्ती नहीं हो पाती है, ऐसे में जंगल वॉर की स्थिति इनके बीच हो सकती है। इस चीज का खतरा जरूर है, लेकिन जो दूसरा खतरा है वो... जी